Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Afterglow Live Recap Podcast. My name is Sia,
And I'm Aaron Gregor.
and we are the co hosts, and we're also the co founders of the Dallas chapter of Global Leaders Organization, to which this whole entire podcast series is about. We talk about the weekly speaker series, Business Acceleration 2.0, that Global Leaders Organization puts on every week. And we talk about the merits of the speakers, good, bad, ugly, but let's be honest. Pretty much all the speakers are amazing. We might have some constructive tweaks of what we think, but in general, the idea of it is to have us business leaders chat about it in real, normal conversational tones. So today we welcome back Mr. Jonas Bull, who is, I'm just going to decide, I'm going to make you my Baba Booey.
Right.
I'm kidding. Our Baba Booey, by the way. Sorry.
Fair enough. I'm good with that.
So anyway, Jonas, welcome back. This week we were talking Jeff Crilley of Real News PR joined Michelle, the CEO, and they were talking about PR and the state of PR today. And I'm just guys, it was like near and dear to my heart because podcasting touches so much of what PR does today. And so I thought, you know what, Jonas, as usual, you were having lots of comments during out the segment. So let's talk about it. What did you think? What is the state of PR in your mind?
Well, first of all, I'll just say that if you caught that episode or you have seen Jeff in other places, the Jeff you see on TV and podcasts is the real Jeff. That is what he's like in person and in private. But yeah, I think. It's interesting because there was a time when if you wanted to get a message out, you really had to have a PR firm or a PR arm or a PR person, somebody that really had to get you on the news or get you on the Late Show or whatever the radio stations, whatever it was. And some of those outlets are still important. All of those outlets are still important, but there's so many other places now. It almost feels like you can try to wing it a little bit more, especially when you're just starting out. And I think one of the things that I felt really good about Jeff saying was that if he doesn't feel like you're at a place where your money is best spent on hiring his firm, that he'll tell you no, because he doesn't want you to be disappointed and wants you to spend your money and spend your time and money and effort in the right places. And I think you can start smaller these days and start building some traction.
Yeah. No, so I mean that was actually heartwarming to me because I too have had that same conversation with individuals, for those that want to know if podcasting is right for them. And, the answer is not necessarily yes all the time, although I'm a bit of an addict myself. I'm sorry, advocate of podcasting. I think the medium is a great tool. Sometimes it's not the perfect time for you, right? If you can't allocate the time or resources, that's really, you have to think about that and part of your decisioning tree on how to grow your business from a marketing perspective. So, Aaron, can I ask you this question? Like, because you've been around enough entrepreneurs in your, storied career, Entrepreneur Summit, and all that you've done. Is there a right time, and is there that tipping point where you say, yeah, now's the time that you need to look at investing into your marketing and investing into like a PR agency, maybe to augment your activities?
Yeah, I think with PR especially, you've got to be ready to capitalize on it. So marketing and PR are two very different things to me. Marketing, hopefully and again, marketing, I even branch out with like a straight ROI return marketing versus like a branding type, piece where maybe you're just trying to get your name recognition. Coca-Cola runs a Super Bowl ad. They don't see a direct correlation of Coca-Cola bottles sold. However, with PR, it's even a different beast. And sometimes maybe you're getting, great exposure, but it may not equate exactly to sales for you, but you've got to be able to capitalize on that. So maybe, showcasing yourself. Hey, I've been on these news shows, or I've been highlighted here, or, how can I leverage this to other things? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs may not be ready for that. They're not in a position that, they're just trying to get through the day, and then to get exposure, it may not do much for them, because they need to use that and leverage it themselves. And so if you're not ready for that, I really think you have to be careful with PR. PR is it's an interesting thing to me too. And I've hired PR firms in the past, and it can be frustrating for a lot of entrepreneurs too, because it's not cheap. You're hiring these people to connect with news outlets and stuff for you. And just because they connect with them and talk about you, it doesn't mean anything can happen for you. So sometimes you're paying money, and they're working, but you're not seeing results on it too. So it can be several months of just emptiness, and that can be very hard for entrepreneurs. And if you need that money to turn, it's not the time to go to a PR firm.
I love that. And so I think the message ultimately is it's an investment, right? And it's time to, what did he say? You can't just plant the seed and expect it to sprout instantly. So this is definitely that seed analogy of, over time, if you keep nurturing it, keep investing into it, it will sprout into something that is recognizable in a way. That's when you see those tangible results. So I liked that. But okay, so fine. We're at that decision point where, hey, we can make that investment. We can put that money towards a long-term play. And then he said there is a time and place to do it. So what he was saying, techniques to look at and think about, is Soundbites versus and I'm sorry, not versus, Soundbites and Media Frenzy. I was tickled by those terms because I was like, oh, it makes sense. Like, I mean, we think about it, but Jonas, like Soundbites, like, what do you think about when he's saying, hey, you really need to look and think about your messaging and create a soundbite?
Well, you typically think, and I think probably a lot of people who have watched the media over, it would be easy to point at the last 4 years or so, but I think it's longer than that. And think of sound bites as these little hot takes that are, usually kind of snappy and snippy and maybe feel a little bit greasy. But then I was thinking about this just this morning, that I've spent the last year and a half, 2 years, building a little, what I would call like my 60-second life, where I've been trying to package up a little piece of thought in 60 seconds or less, and put that out there. And there's a lot of people who have contacted me and said they really enjoyed that, but that's a soundbite. I mean, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. I mean, those are sound bites. That's soundbite length. And I will definitely tell you, there's a process, there's some skill that you have to develop to be able to package up a thought in that short of a time effectively. And I don't know that I'm there yet, but it's definitely a skill you have to develop.
Well, and I think it's what you become known for, right? I mean, this isn't a soundbite, so to say, but look at how the evening show landscape has changed. So James Cordone, Jimmy Fallon, you don't watch, I don't know how many people actually watch the whole show, but what is building their audience right now are the sound bites of their shows, right? The carpool karaoke, the funny pieces that are 5 minutes long, 6 minutes long, whatever, 10 possibly at the max. But those are the bits that are building it. So it's like, if you can hone in on, what's that magic piece for you, I really do think that's huge, because it is the way of the world right now in everything.
That's a really good point. And as people who do and produce podcasts, podcaster, occasional guest, one of the things that I have heard from people who listen to podcasts, not necessarily ours, but even just in general, is you need to have some sound bites, some short takes, for people to just get into it.
Right.
Not everybody is going to be interested in sitting down for an hour-long conversation about what a chamber of commerce is. Although that was a very interesting conversation, much more so than you would have thought.
Yeah,
but
no, but
but
so
those are the kinds of things where if you can package up little, a smaller bite that's more digestible for someone to, sit through 30 seconds, 60 seconds.
right. I mean, if you think about in our social media age that we're in, I say it over and over again, but in the past it used to be, you hear something 3 times, you remember it. Now we're
Mhm.
so bombarded with so much content and messaging that it takes 17 times. If you can get a soundbite that's something that's going to have a hook that connects people in that short frame, like connect that emotion, thought, whatever. I mean, you've got gold, right? So,
Right.
but it wasn't just simply that though. And I thought Jeff brilliantly said, look, there's also something that you need to consider is how do you engage? And I got nervous when he used the term media frenzy. He said, hey, if there's something going on in current events where you can leverage that people are already emotionally connected or attracted to, so the sound bites already happened, how do you tack on your hitch, if you will, and ride that wave of attention from a media frenzied topic? Now, here's my question that I asked is, well, how do you balance tacking on and hitching on something that's, out there and everyone's talking about it without sounding, disingenuous or, just being a Me Too opportunist?
Well, so I'll give a great example of this. I talked to somebody who's a lawyer and has a podcast as an example. So his highest downloads of episodes are when he broke down the Britney Spears conservatorship. So it's not
Mm.
like he's using that to hitch his wagon to Britney Spears, but there's a lot of questions around that, right? Like, why is this an issue? How is this a problem? So by him breaking down exactly what's going on and how this works, that's an opportune time for him to, not just do a podcast on it, but even leverage that into the news. People have questions about this. Like, help me understand what's happening with her and why this is an issue and why she's fighting this. So again, he's not exploiting her, but he's just trying to it's a very big topic right now, and he's trying to help his audience understand exactly what's going on. So that's and again, he can leverage that not just to a ton of downloads on his podcast, but going on other podcasts, going on the news and explaining this. So and it just gets him exposure on this.
Yeah, no, I think you don't think about other industries being able to tie in and associate, like you said, the legal aspect of it. That's huge. And that's interesting. And I'm assuming he did it in a way that, again, layman terms can
Right.
understand and connect with it. Yeah, no, I mean, but it's hard. I mean, I think that takes some, real, I don't know, what do you call it? Emotional intelligence to understand how that messaging can come off if it's not done correctly. And I think that's like when he said it, I was like, ooh, but there's a gotcha to that, add the asterisk. Um, but then again, that depends on what your personal branding is. And if you want to be controversial and have a controversial, opinion, maybe that's the way to go.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
another twist to it too. If you wanted to say, I think, you could say, here's how this works, or you could be like, I think Britney's dad is right, and be like, what,
What?
and have
Yeah.
that whole side too. Sorry, Jonas, what were you gonna say?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. There's so many people who basically make a career out of being contrarian. Won't name any names, but
Yeah.
but that's I mean, that's a choice. That's a choice that you make if that's where you want to be. I do think you need to, unless you're really committed to just being that guy or gal, you should really only do that if that's true to who you are. I think the authenticity needs to be there for that. I've gotten a good deal of discussion back and forth on a similar topic with sort of similar, Amanda Knox, that went through such a terrible ordeal in Italy um, years ago, and now there's a movie. And so first of all, her, she had a take on what her feelings were about being loosely portrayed in the movie. And it wasn't so much about, that the movie was good or bad, so much as that it was that this story that she was just accidentally a part of keeps getting associated with her, and you know, everybody brings it up as the Amanda Knox story, and you know, people, Simone Biles is going to, you know, continue to have things associated with her. You know, Sha'Carri Richardson is going to have stuff. I'm mispronouncing her name. Jonathan side eyes me. Um, but we, you know, we've got these things where we stick people in these roles, and you know, to bring it back to the conversation, is that where you want to be? Do you want to be the person who is perpetuating that story, or do you want to bring some clarity? Either of those are valid choices. I think that was the outcome of the Amanda Knox discussion.
Wasn't necessarily her, and that's the other thing. Okay, so that brings up the next topic that I thought he did a great job of. Was okay, so who is your audience? Are you broadcasting or are you narrowcasting? And I love those terms, because in podcasting, as we all are, and when we talk about with our clients, is if you want to broadcast to a grander general audience, understand that there is more fight for attention, right? Because there's so many other subjects and topics out there, and you're just kind of like, you know, how do you find that value that people are going to gravitate towards you when you're in a sea of other people broadcasting at the exact same time? And narrowcasting is what we often talk about is okay, great. If you're a business and you know who your target audience is, narrow it down to that targeted audience. That way, again, the ones that you want to talk to are the ones that are actually going to listen because they understand what you're talking about. So perfect example, case in point, you know, we have a client that sponsors a podcast called Ransomware Battleground. It is about network security, but they're honing it in on ransomware. I mean, that's like a niche within a niche, but it does well, right? And so that's where I think, from a PR perspective, is understanding who your audience is and who you're talking to. So, I mean, what do you guys think about broadcasting versus narrowcasting?
Well, I guess when I think of narrowcasting, probably one of the big things that, you know, if you're getting on news channels, like, does it benefit you to get on Fox News or CNBC? You know, CMSNBC, whatever. No, not CNN, the MSNBC or whatever.
MSNBC, yeah.
So different aspects, like magazines. I have friends who have specific products, and they need to get into women, you know, Allure as an example, or, you know, those types of magazines for their products. So you do have to think about that, because if you have somebody just pitching you wildly, that can be you know, it's like Facebook ads. You could spend a ton of money and never hit anybody who's even close to your target market.
Yeah, if you're in, so, you know, most people, I think, are probably not in the business of doing podcasts for the sake of podcast or shows. You know, there are people, but most people are not. So if you're like the Ransomware Battleground people, if you're in a business, you know, your show somehow needs to be pulling people to your business. And to Aaron's point about the, you know, do you want to be on Fox News or MSNBC or what? Or do you want to, you know, is your play that you are focusing on a certain demographic, or is it your play that you are broadly speaking an expert in a certain thing? There's a guy I can think of right off the top of my head who is on both as an economist and marketing expert. And he's, you know, he has a political position. I mean, he definitely has a position, but his reason for being asked on those shows and coming back to those shows is not his politics. His reason for being there is his expertise in a certain type of marketing and economics. And that drives people back to when they think of, well, I wonder who does courses on this, and they see his name associated with this particular school, they say, oh, that's where I want to go.
Right. Well,
even if I don't agree with his politics.
Well, hey, regardless of the politics side of it, right? And I thought Jeff made a great point of talking about, hey, if you're going to be putting out content like this, be the expert and own the fact that you're the expert. And I actually, at first I thought it was kind of like, oh, that's so funny. No, I'm not an expert at it. But over time, you get thought of as that credible person. It builds credibility to who you are. You may not necessarily be the perfect expert per se of a topic, but what you're doing in that medium. I mean, I hate bringing this up over and over again. I know people roll their eyes at me, but Joe Rogan is not an expert on any of those topics that he talks about. But what he is an expert at is interviewing people, asking him about those topics such that you do learn or you get those sound bites that he's going after or what have you. Right. So, that's what those master classes, those celebrities and all that talk about. They are the experts in it. And I find that fascinating. Do you agree you have to be an expert to put out this content, you guys?
I think you have to know the topic. I mean, here's the deal. This is imposter syndrome. What makes you the expert, I think, is what we struggle with. Is it a degree? Is it 1 year of experience, 4 years of experience? Like, what is it? And I think we can all sit and look at somebody and be like, well, and I have a very huge problem with that. Well, I only did 2 years. I've only helped a few hundred clients. Maybe they've helped 1,000. So they're better. Who cares? Like, you have to own your space. And if you really believe you can help people in this space and answer questions, then yes, you're an expert. Like, you obviously can't, read a book. I mean, maybe you can, I don't know. I can't say that, but you need to be an expert. Yes. But I think you have to, stop using that orange dot to clarify what you're expert when you become that expert, and just own it and go on there and yes, talk about it.
There was a guy years ago that was on a commercial as he was a notorious expert on everything. And which I kind of feel like that sometimes. They also saw a matter of fact, I think it was Ransomware Battleground maybe that had I know it was another one that had is it Michael Bohr? I'm so terrible with names. It had Michael Bohr who bills himself as a jack of all trades. And I feel that, like it's not necessarily that you have university credentials or some other certification or whatever that makes you the expert for the purpose that you're talking about. It may be that you've got extensive experience. It may be that you have you can declare yourself an expert, as we have seen a lot of people do. I think what is going to win that battle is not that you say, I'm the expert because I have an MBA, or I'm the expert because I have a degree in computer science. What's going to win the day for you being the expert is the content that you bring and the perspective that you bring. If you know your stuff, it doesn't matter whether anybody who says, well, you know your stuff, but you don't have the degree is just
right.
I mean, that's basically just a hater.
Well, it's a hater. Well, yeah, a lot of industries require. Okay, look, there are professions that do require education. Let's not diminish the role of education, right? Sure. I mean, I don't want a doctor that has Googled, 10 minutes worth of stuff and diagnosing me. Okay. That's not what I don't want. Right. That's what we all don't want. So I'll give respect for those that have actually dedicated for years, but there are other things where let's be honest, like marketing. Absolutely. If you get degrees and you've got the experience and you've got the wisdom, obviously there's value behind it, right? Because you've taken the time to get that broader knowledge and accrue that knowledge, but it doesn't diminish an individual that is suddenly jumping into marketing that maybe just based on their experiences has a niche of area of expertise. Absolutely.
I was going to say a place like that too, I would very much be careful, because obviously there's a lot of people who know what they're talking about and haven't done experience. However, I would be reluctant. And this, like in marketing, I'd be reluctant to take a lot of advice from a professor who's been teaching the subject for 20 years and hasn't had practical experience in it. Right. Because like if he's if they're teaching me foundational pieces of marketing, that's great. If they're telling me about, social media, I don't know. I'd rather listen to the, if I'm looking at, okay, how do I market on TikTok? I'd probably rather pick that 16-year-old who's built that following in a year and kind of figure out, okay, help me figure out how to reverse engineer what you did. So it's an interesting concept because it just depends on what exact topic within marketing they're an expert in, right?
Exactly. And you nailed the next area that I wanted to bring up was how generations consume news. And Jeff made a point. He goes, look, there's the boomers that will get their news in the traditional formats that you think of: TV, radio, newspaper, etc. But the younger millennials, and I'm actually saying younger millennials now, but the younger millennials and Gen Z do not. He said flat out, they do not look at traditional TV. They'll stream it maybe and look for those little, again, sound bites, right? Or the media frenzy. They'll maybe look at it on a YouTube segment, for example, or a segment of whatever on TikTok. I mean, it's crazy that there are people talking about news concepts on TikTok, but this is how they're receiving their news. Whether it's biased or not biased is not what I'm saying, but that's how they're consuming it. And guys, what does that mean for content creators? What's the next generation of news then?
Well, this is what's funny is if I hear a news story, I'm like, oh, somebody passed away, or this happened. My first place is to go to Twitter and be like, all right, did this really happen? Like, are people talking about this? Did this really happen? Is this trend? Like that's where I go, just to be, is this real? Just because that's, a belief. But I think you have to be more open-minded about, is it just, I want to get on NBC, ABC, CBS? Like, is that really just your play of the, nightly news? Is that where you want to go? Or do you have to be more niched and go to magazines? Do you have to be more niched and go to, try to get on the buzz feeds of the world? That's PR too. PR firms get you on your podcast on the Apple download, trending podcasts. So there's so much to play at it that I think you really have to understand your audience and understand, okay, it's not just about getting on the NBC local news. And I think this is a great conversation for your PR firm because it's expanded way beyond just, let me write a news story for you and get you featured.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think one of the things that Jeff did point out, and I think is valuable information if you're thinking about this, is that a good PR firm will help you get pointed in the right direction for where your target audience lives. If it's evening news, if it's newspapers, magazines, it shouldn't be a one size fits all approach. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something. If you're thinking about it, that's something to look for as far as vetting whether your PR firm is the right thing for you. They shouldn't be approaching you with a one size fits all. We're going to get you on the Dallas Morning News, because that might not be the right fit for you.
Nope, that's absolutely true. And it is can I ask you guys this question? Because I guess I'm confusing and I'm mixing it in here, and I know we're wrapping up on time. So these PR agencies that are out there, and Jeff's organization is doing a bang up job. But how much of is it are PR agencies also having to evolve into become social media agencies? Is that really ultimately what they're becoming now? Or are they still not pandering, wrong word. Are they still pushing the traditional PR agenda? Do you think are PR agencies evolving fast enough?
Well, I do think they have to evolve. I think, even just maybe they don't do it themselves, but like, we talked about connecting with PR firms from a podcasting perspective. Like a lot of them know they need to do this. Maybe they're not the shop, but they've got the connections to help leverage that. So they don't have to be like Jeff, where they become a one end all be all. But I do think they need to understand it. I feel like it's become more of a combination of marketing versus just two very different things, if that makes sense. So maybe they don't have to do it all, but I think as they approach, they have to be part of a wholesome strategy.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a bit more collaboration between the two. I was actually talking to a client earlier this week, major $1 billion global corporation, and their comm team, PR comm team, and their marketing were together on the call saying, look, here's what we need to do in our messaging. And, for me to experience and see this, it's like, I haven't seen that in a long time in a way where they're like, yeah, we get it. Let's do this kind of thing. Because it's usually isolated at times, right? They do their own thing and then they're like, oh, okay, we'll meet somewhere in the middle when we come to launch kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're wrapped up on time as always. I only go over time. Jonas, sir, it's also a pleasure to have you, and we love having you as a premier Dallas member of Global Leaders Organization. Before we wrap up, can I ask you a question? Why are you still a member of GLO? Because you've been a real big cheerleader since when we launched in the pandemic for Dallas chapter, and you stuck with us. Can I ask you why?
Well, I think it's mostly because the co-chairs of the Dallas chapter are so awesome. But aside from that, you know, the things that you're exposed to, the speakers obviously is a big deal, but the other members, the chapter members, are so helpful and willing to talk to you about what you're doing with your business. There's a ton of information on the GLO website, on the member portal. For access to capital is one of the things that we emphasize there, and there's a ton of information in there about how to be prepared for capital, what stages, what markers you need to look for in your business to know if you're ready for capital. Things that I don't know where you would find that from the perspective of the capital supplier, if not there. It's certainly not something that I learned in business school. I learned a lot of things, but it wasn't that. It's amazing. That's the kind of stuff that is. I mean, it's definitely been worth it.
Awesome. I'm glad. So, Aaron, do you want to take us home?
Yeah, so all of us, what we're talking about is the Business Acceleration 2.0 series, which every Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Central, you can join us live for the next event. And you can get access to the VIP event or the 15 minutes, which is you have to be a premier member. So check out with GLO, GLO.com to check out more. We'd love to have you be a premium member of Dallas. And we have an event coming up in Dallas on August 25th that we'd love to have you be a part of. We need to add a link to that, probably to the comments. There we go. But we've got an Eventbrite to sign up. And so this is going to be a pretty incredible event featuring 7 different business leaders. And it's going to give you a taste of forum. I'll say guys, because this is very guys, but how these guys work together in a sense of being able to help each other and really elevate their businesses together, and just give you a taste of more of what GLO is all about. So join us on the 25th at 6 p.m.
And again, think of it this way, as if you were your own board of directors, your own personal board of directors. Yeah. It does get meaty. It's not one of those, it's not a mastermind. I do want to clarify, because people have been asking about forum, like what does that entail? This is literally your board of directors who will literally have vested interest, and they will not, and the part of the rules of forum is you do not give advice as forum members unless it is based on your personal experiences, how to resolve and address things. So it's not, you should do this. It's more of the, well, hey, when I had 5 people quit on me, or I had to let go of 5 people, here's what we did. It's such an amazing way of learning and growing your business together with other successful folks in your area. So on that note, guys, next week's, oh my goodness gracious, next week's Business Acceleration 2.0, oh my gosh, I can't speak English. Next week's Business Acceleration 2.0 guest is, and there goes my timing on things. I forgot to pull up the name. So next week is Adele Archer with Eternova. So Adele is an amazing CEO. She won a deal with Mark Cuban on Shark Tank. And so she just recently, as of last month, pulled up another round of $10 million round for her business, backed by Mark Cuban. And it is, in essence, a memorial diamond company. So if you want to have an alternative form of afterlife, if you will, you could be compressed into a gemstone. So if you want to learn more about Adele Archer's story, she's so amazing, and just her idea behind it, extraordinarily compelling. And how the heck do you pull Shark Tank and then get $10 million on top of that? I mean, she's part of the Forbes 30 under 30. What an amazing story. So next week, next Thursday, Business Acceleration 2.0 series, Adele Archer. And on that note, guys, nothing else to say. Aaron, Jonas?
No, we're good.
Thanks for having and thanks for joining, everyone. And we shall see you guys next week, next Thursday. Next Thursday is Business Acceleration 2.0. Next Friday is the Afterglow. So see you next week, everyone.